Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Marnie Ginsberg from Reading Simplified, where we streamline reading instruction and accelerate students' reading achievement. And I'm so happy to have a guest, Tara Hess from Meeker Elementary, with us today. Thanks for being here, Tara.
I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tara is no a stranger to Reading Simplified. She has been doing Reading Simplified for a couple years now, and she's going to be on tap on Thursday, mañana, at 3 p.m. Eastern in a panel talking about their experience using Reading Simplified. So don't miss that. I would have had her on tomorrow, but we're also having Dr. Sharon Ware come on tomorrow, who's also talking tomorrow. So it's a treat to have someone to dialogue with. We're going to be talking about the Accelerate Literacy Summit. It is going on right now. We're on day 3 of the main event, day 4 of the whole thing. So you've got 2 more days. You can still sign up and join, and I will try to figure out how to put the link in the chat. We want to talk about what we experienced, and hear from you. What are your questions? What are your comments? Okay, so start putting questions or comments or suggestions or ahas in the chat for me, please. And there is a hi for Randy. Awesome. I'm gonna pull up that link, you guys, from while I do that. How about Tara? You just give us a little bit about your background.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm currently teaching second grade. This will be my third year, and I taught first grade 4 years prior to that. I'm new to teaching, not new to being an adult, but teaching's my second career, and I've been at
Oh,
Meeker for all
I
7
forgot.
years. Um, the school that I'm at is we are a mostly minority, and or, I'm sorry, well, I think we're 50% minority and about
Hmm.
75% low income. We have about 450 kids. We've got a preschool through fifth grade, and it's a fantastic environment. We've really started to pull our families into it and our staff. In the last 3 years, we have come together so remarkably, and I think we're all in it for the kids. We're all in it together and supporting each other. And I'm very blessed to work for an amazing administration team. Our principal and assistant principal are just, you could not ask for two better leaders in your school. And alongside of our coaches and our other classroom teachers, our special education staff, our parent. I mean, we are just really all clicking and all
Hmm.
in with the same goals in mind.
That's been my experience. I actually had the privilege of going out to Meeker Elementary and witnessing what they were doing maybe almost 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. And great leadership, great enthusiasm, and great rapid implementation of Reading Simplified. In fact, that we're going to share that in the talk tomorrow. They even got an evaluation study from the American Institutes for Research on their data, and it was pretty stunning. Most professional development programs don't see that kind of progress in just 1 year. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow. So how many, give us a thumbs up, a yes, or something like that in the chat if you have caught even one session in the summit. Here is the link to join. I know I've seen Randy there, and Jody, and certainly Tara. And we even have Allison in the house. Thank you for being here. Okay, so while we want to hear from you guys. Oh, okay, here we go. This is perfect. Thank you, Jody. What curriculum did you pair with Reading Simplified for reading instruction?
This is a good one. When I first started teaching in first grade, our primary grades were using reading mastery, which has a place. But our second through fifth grade were loosely based on wonders, but I don't think there was really any foundational aside from there was some SIPS intervention, but nothing was sticking. Absolutely nothing was. This is what the district provided, and we tried to do the best with it. But even our tier two and tier three was pretty much reading mastery. for, I know up until first grade, it was just you read the kindergarten reading mastery lessons. And it didn't work last year, but maybe it'll work this year. And so this year, we're now, we have moved, we'll be in our third year with EL education. We really like the knowledge and the content building portion of it. We do not use their foundational skills block because Reading Simplified does all of that and then some for us.
And that's a great recommendation because Reading Simplified is not a complete English language arts curriculum. It is just that foundational piece. So just take that part out of whatever big, chunky, blocky, overwhelming curriculum you have. Take that foundational piece out and plop in your streamlined Reading Simplified 3-part lesson, and it's a lot easier. So good question, Jody. And yeah, you've got some encouragement there from your team. And your literacy partner has been in several. So sweet. More questions for you, Tara. Are you using Reading Simplified in all tiers of your MTSS process?
We sure are. We're using it K through 5. In fact, I think we're actually getting our preschool trained in it as well. But we're using it in our tier 2 and tier 3. You'll hear tomorrow from one of our 4th grade teachers who has been using it with her kids and seeing so much success. We also have a significant special needs program, and we use it with those with the students who access those classes too. And we're seeing progress across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be done with all students.
Yeah. And Tara had an intervention group the first year she stumbled upon Reading Simplified, right? You got rid of most of those kids. So that you accomplished the goal of MTSS.
We did. They were in first grade when I first had them, and the students that I had that are in 3rd grade now are maintaining their growth, and they're on grade level, and it's just so exciting to see that works and it sustains itself, and our kids have really just gone with it and gone running with it.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Good question from the field. Keep them coming. Ooh, I got excited there. Keep them coming. So Randy is watching part of the summit. She's watching my talk. Excellent, with the VIP ticket. I'm assuming that's what it is because Tara's is coming up tomorrow. It hasn't been released yet. And Anna checked out our keynote today. Dr. Pamela Snow gave us the fundamentals in cognitive science about the cognitive science of learning that I didn't learn in my master's. Who learned that in their teaching education program? Cognitive load, working memory. Seems kind of important for learning, but I didn't get that. I did finally get it when I was in my dissertation at the doctoral level, and I took a elective in cognitive psychology. And yeah, Kathy jumped in on Pamela Snow's and Bruce Howlett's talks. Excellent. What other conversation points do you guys have? Questions about the summit? Questions about the topics? How many of you are new to an approach like Reading Simplified, whether you call it linguistic phonics, speech to print, or structured linguistic literacy? Maybe a thumbs up if you're new to it or don't know what we're talking about. Checking on my phone to look for you guys. While we're waiting for that, there's always a little bit of a time delay. I'd love to hear what Tara thought about today. Now, Tara's been a faithful Accelerate Literacy Summit follower, encouraging folks and learning a lot along the way. So what were some of the things that you noticed from today or this whole week?
Well, there's two themes that I see popping up pretty much every single presentation that I've seen so far, and they are efficiency and feedback. So it's been interesting to see how much of that is common across all the programs that are offered and approaches, and something that I know from experience teaching Reading Simplified has really worked.
Yeah. Dr. Seidenberg mentioned efficiency. Mm-hmm. Dr. Kearns mentioned it at the end. Dr. Snow mentioned it. I mean, Trey Hadrick and Lindsay Kemeny are our next two keynotes. We'll see on Thursday and Friday. We'll see what they do. But then that's not the only folks that have talked about efficiency either, right? When people talk about the nitty gritty of instruction, they're talking about that a
right?
lot.
They are, and I think in efficiency, one of the overlaps with it was talking about over teaching, and
Mm-hmm.
we think about how SLL approaches don't have they're not rules based. There aren't syllable types and syllable rules. And
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed in the chats that there are a lot of people that are really apprehensive. But Nora said something in
Yeah.
her. She said that she appreciates skepticism and
Mm-hmm.
questions because
Mm-hmm.
that's how you keep your programs um, keep them at fidelity. Got
Right.
to hold yourselves accountable and hold our teaching
Yeah.
accountable.
Yeah. I can't remember if Dr. Seidenberg made it in this point in this talk, but he said before a lot in different in talks and different things he's written. We know a lot about how the brain learns to read. The science of instruction is less well documented. So as we make all these shifts in our classroom, um, yeah, we need to move towards explicit systematic phonics, but that doesn't really tell us a lot about the nitty gritty. And so we're going to need to keep having these dialogues. And I think that frustrates some people because they want it nailed down in a box. And they learned one box from one person. But um, we're just saying here in this summit, like, think about taking a couple things in that box out and putting them on the side only for special occasions or maybe not at all. And you'll get a slim down box or it'll be a lighter box.
One of
But it can
the
be hard.
one of the thing that comparisons that he made was, I mean, there's a lot of teachers that are in schools that are going to UFly right now, and but
Mm-hmm,
he said you don't even get to the ing
mm-hmm,
ending until lesson 65. He said babies know ing, they're walking, they're
yeah,
talking,
yeah,
they're running. He
yeah.
said you don't it's taking way too long to get not a whole lot out of what we know kids are capable of.
Yeah, UFly is a really strong version that's come out that I think is much closer aligned with the science of reading than a lot of old traditional programs. It's so new and it's been um, strategic, but it does kind of have a scope and sequence that is very traditional. And I think that's worthy of discussion. Here at Reading Simplified, we aim for focusing mostly on high frequency spellings and just keep moving further and further um, ahead in the high frequency spelling. So, for instance, did you know the top 300 high frequency sight words make up about 65% of written English? There are no Z's, no words with the letter Z. There's only one word with the letter J, no words with the letter X. So, do we need to like teach all the alphabet first, or do we need to teach um, the Y at the end of only and
Mhm.
any and many and happy? And happy's not in the top 300, I don't think, but or the and mother and father and other and number. So that's like
Yeah,
think strategically about what the kids need to be able to jump into real reading.
that's just it. It's what do kids need to be readers? And instead of thinking about what do my kids need to pass their DIBELS benchmark,
Hmm.
maybe they're two different things. And
Yeah.
we promise that it will come together by the end of the year. But you might not see
Mm,
it. They might not know all of their letter names in kindergarten in the middle of the year.
right.
And that's okay because they're probably going to know 20 nonsense words and 60
Hmm.
sounds. I mean,
Hmm.
it's what it's what we want them to be as readers, and we know that letter names do have some effect on it, but not as much as phonemic awareness and phonemic. Well, I'll just go with it. Phonemic awareness in the context of written words.
Right. Right. 100%. And I think Jennifer Glick, a Reading Simplified teacher in the panel on Tuesday, made that point that her students did great, except they didn't do that great in the letter names for kindergarten because she wasn't as concerned about that. And, for those of you who are new to our type of approach, either here at Reading Simplified or any kind of structured linguistic literacy approach, It's not that we're never going to teach the letter sounds. It's just not in that starting out the gate. We just don't emphasize it because it detracts from decoding. And so, as Tara points out, it's really going to help with nonsense word reading because you know how to blend, you know, the letter sounds, you know how to blend them together. I like what your literacy partner's saying here. This is part of the trickiness. Um, it's really an art of balanced learning, and you know, Mark Seidenberg like made a big point in his book, seminal book, Language at the Speed of Sight, to dump balanced literacy. But then he is in this at the end of his talk saying, but we do still need balanced learning, thinking a balance between explicit teaching and not over teaching, and then letting some implicit instruction do the work. I mentioned this yesterday, but I really think it's one of the most important things of the entire summit. He said most reading learning happens implicitly. And I think as we move away from balanced literacy, where there was too much assumption of the beginning parts were implicit, we're swinging too far to let's teach everything and step by step and components broken down into many boxes and not actually putting the pieces together and then letting them have at it. Which brings us back to your point about feedback, Tara.
Mhm.
Get them into the code, and then with feedback, they can more easily make those implicit learning gains.
They can. You're not doing the work for them. You're coaching them, and that's. I've even told
Mm-hmm.
that to my second grade group. Is that we? I just compare myself to a soccer coach, and I'm not. I'm just asking you to do that. So when you read it again, that and when they see me as their coach and not just as a teacher and mimicking what I'm doing, that they see a
Mm-hmm.
real benefit to
Yeah.
to the feedback that I'm giving. But it has to be at the moment. It can't be the next day, like, hey, I was looking over your reading test and you were a little bit slow yesterday. So today, no, it's in the moment and it's
Mm-hmm.
snippets. You don't have to have kids reading an entire page, but I do, depending on what you're teaching them with. Sometimes there's a reason to have whole group call and response, but most of the time it's individual turns, and you're giving feedback specific to that student at that time, and
Mm-hmm.
correcting in the moment if you have to, and letting them practice over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. Which ties into what Dr. Snow said. We got to give them the explicit instruction, then we have to have time for retrieval. So every time that child is attempting a word on her own, she's doing that hard work of trying to pull that sound. Oh, I know I've seen this IGH thing before. What is that? What is that? Oh, I. Oh, light. Or no, she goes loud, and this is then an opportunity for you to use your little pencil tap and the IGA to say no, try I. And then she's got a high likelihood of remembering that next time because she struggled with it, she missed it, she got the feedback, and she fixed it. Um, that's all like such a simple, powerful sequence. But if you're doing a lot of things whole group or in isolated practice without throwing some curveballs at kids, they have fewer opportunities to have that rapid back and forth between trying, retrieving, error, correction, and moving forward.
That's one thing he said, was that we need to work with and not work on the working memory. And because
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking as he was going, I was like, well, how do we increase their working memory? How do we get it more elastic and help it grow? Well, we don't use strategies. We actually let kids read and read it on their and try it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big shift too.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most important thing is that however you can get to that starting off point, what Dr. Seidenberg says, cracking the code, and then get them into real reading with the feedback. That's like that's the hinge on their whole career hinges on that. And if you can get to there, say sometime in kindergarten or really early first, then they're going to have enough exposure to do that implicit learning, to get retrieval practice in, to get the word stuff solidified, so they become automatic, and then they read widely, and they can learn more about the world and learn vocabulary. We've got some really great comments here. Randy really likes what you said, Tara, about teaching students to read and not so much for the test. The tests can be very helpful markers. They give us sub components of reading information, but keep them in the right position. They shouldn't trump. Are they actually reading? And Mary, thank you so much for saying this. Learning a lot. Enjoyed the talk about the struggle of the parent going through so many programs before what she needed to help her daughter. Right. That was Nikki Pratty's experience. Very heartbreaking. And she is the administrator for the S2P SLL Linguistic Phonics Exploration Group. If you type S2P Exploration Group, you might find it. That's where a lot of people are having these discussions about different types of programs and how to transition. Maybe if you're either in a balanced literacy program or more traditional phonics. Okay, if you're just popping in, we're talking about the Accelerate Literacy Summit. It's going on now. It's a big shindig. We're having some fun there. Lots of people coming in, including this week we had Dr. Mark Seidenberg, Dr. Devin Kearns, and Dr. Pamela Snow. Tomorrow is Lindsay Kemeny, who wrote a book this year on how to teach reading, and Trey or Ernest Hadrick, who's a reading advocate, who's shaken up a lot of things in his community and given a TEDx talk. So we want to just hear your thoughts, and I can see it already here in the chat. Yeah, we're definitely having some of the conversation about Orton Gillingham approaches versus structured linguistic literacy approach. It's a challenging conversation. There's so many similarities, and some of the folks in the chat want us to like not harp on the differences. But we're also finding it hard for people to understand how, both programs read words, both programs go through synthetic phonics, both of them do write words. A lot of the OG programs will say the sounds as you do it, although not all. So they look so similar. Why all the fuss?
There's
Do you
also
have
been
any
a lot
thoughts
of
on?
talk about not just well, okay. I want to go on to spelling though, but we have to talk about spelling. But I'll go back to the OG. So when I first had my intervention group, and I was just learning about science of reading and trying other things, I thought OG was just going to be the saving grace. And so I bought my sand, and I've got like the scratchy paper, and we were like tapping out our sounds on our arms, and
Mm-hmm.
guess what? We learned a, I, in that order in first grade, and that took us from August to November. And I'm just kicking myself now because in November I found Switch It, and then started um, finding out more about Reading Simplified, and I was like, there's no way that kids take on long vowels. There's just no way, and there's no way they can learn these spellings if they're not doing like rainbow writing in the air or drawing it in their sand. But they did. They certainly
Mm-hmm.
learned to much
Yeah,
faster.
and switch it adds those letter sounds really rapidly if you haven't done it before. They just kind of glom onto it because they're understanding the code a lot better. What were you going to talk about with spelling, Tara?
So there's been a lot of people that are asking about spelling, and how can I get they I think that there's a belief that spelling is it goes at the same trajectory as reading, and I
Yes.
know from you and
Mm.
just from other research that spelling lags way behind. You can have some great spellers, or you can have some
Right.
really great readers that aren't completely 100% with their spelling.
Right.
I understand it now, and I think as a teacher, for me, what I'm going to look at are my standards. So I
Mm-hmm.
know that my kids in second grade are expected to know words that are spelled, not just not reading. I'm not saying reading, but spell words with AI and AY, and AI in the middle of a word and AY at the end, and that's it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to test them on those two spelling things, but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to test them on any other spelling for the
Right.
word A because they can read it. So
Yeah.
it's again, it's one of those things that I'm not worried about. It's just like letter names. It will get there, but to get them to be great readers, it might look a little different than a standard boxed curriculum.
Yeah. That's what's tricky about watching structured linguistic literacy in practice is that we're reading words with boat and go and slow and note and home. And then people ask, okay, what do they do when they're spelling it? Well, we're talking about kindergartners or intervention kids in their first week. We're just warming this puppy up. Like we're not at that graduate level of you got to be able to spell a word. Like we don't expect first graders to know how to spell boat, really. It's not a high frequency word. So but it's great if they can read it and they can read the word soap and um, what are all the OAs? Soak. I mean, once they learn it, then they can read infinite numbers of words with it. And then once they read a lot, then they spell. In fact, I was I deleted this comment because I think if I say it, people always misunderstand me. But the best spelling practice that you can do, but I'm going to say it here because I can add more comments. The best spelling practice that you can do is a lot of reading. That is the number one best activity. I mean, good spellers are always good readers. The reverse can be true, not true, but you can't be almost never, except in some like hyperlaxia situation. You're never going to find a good speller who's not a good reader.
Yeah.
So we're just laying the table, setting the table first to get the foundation so that they can read a lot. And then spelling is a lot easier. If you've read millions of words, because becomes a little, incidental because you've seen it now. Um, 275 times. And so,
Yeah.
and then maybe you get tripped up the first time you write it, and then you're like, oh, yeah, that kind of sound in because, and it sinks. Or you may need to still study it, and that's fine. You study it with the very same tools that we use to learn to read it. Like, I'm going
Mhm.
to write the word. Let's see if I can come up with let's do that word, okay? What's the, you pretend to be my student, okay? Help out, since it's
Okay.
never fun to have just one, me pretending to be both voices. Okay, this is how we would do a spelling lesson. Okay, Tara, so let's write the word because. Now she's going to actually do it, but I'm pretending I'm her. So what's the first chunk of sounds you hear in because?
B.
Yeah, let's just do B first and say it with me. B. Yeah.
E.
And what's the next chunk?
Cause.
Uh-huh. So maybe they write this. Who knows
Mhm.
what they write? Yeah, you got all the sounds. Let's just change. This is a different and the way it looks is it looks like cause. Can you think of the word cause and that
Oh,
ah sound?
yeah,
You
like
remember that?
cause and effect. Yeah.
Yeah, cause and effect. So if we stick that in there, beak, ah, and then the last sound, you got the z sound right, but let's just switch it to a different spelling. This is the same z as in is it exercise? No, it's a different spelling. I can't even think of another example on the
No,
spot.
that one works. Exercise. That
Oh, it does?
works.
Okay. Um, thank you. Don't spell on live streaming. It's bad advice. Don't do math either because, yeah. Okay, so these were tricky, but if you say it the way it looks, and you notice that this is really in there, the root word is cause. There is a cause, a connection. Because, so if I say it because, that's going to help me remember that. But frankly, after that much back and forth, a typically developing reader who's already read the word, like I said, 100 times, that might be all that she needs to get it to stick. And a kid who's dyslexic, you just do that a few more times, maybe many more times if they're deeply dyslexic, but so through the writing, still tying it
Mhm.
to sounds. Um,
There was one presentation today. Was it the Sounds Right presentation? They talked about dictated sentences and how when, especially with early readers and writers, like kindergarten students, I'm thinking primarily, is you don't want to give them too much rope to write their own sentence. You start only with dictated sentences. So those
yeah.
the basic things that you're getting them in the habit of self-correcting before they try more more sophisticated words, I guess.
That
So
might have
that
been
was
Jenny Smith Brock that talked about that. You go
yeah,
from dictation to guided practice to
yeah.
guided writing practice and then to independent. So
I think that was
it's
pretty cool.
phased in. Which is kind of how we do reading. At first, we build words for with the letter sounds already there. Then we read a word that's already there, and then you try to write it. So that's how we do instruction all the time, right? Is developmentally more challenging. I like what Sherry said um, about Trisha Miller's. Here we go. Let's try this. Trisha Miller's talk yesterday. She's got a great presentation on spelling, so go back and check that if you missed it. Her book is called That Spelling Thing, and it's inexpensive, and I think it's really strong. Everything she says aligns with what we would recommend here at Reading Simplified. So good point. Tricky bits. That tricky bit in the AU or the SE and because. Um, This is a good question, Beth. What do you guys think? Okay, there was a conversation, a whole session from Svetlana on RAN, Rapid Automatized Naming, which has been identified as an assessment that can help identify students who are going to struggle with reading. And so Beth wants to know, how do we prepare kinders for this test, this RAN test, when we don't focus on letter names? Listening to that session today, I understand better why RAN is important. Well, it's just a marker, Beth. I don't think of it as something like that we need to worry about when we teach, if that, just in case that's an issue. So I would love to see when the kids don't know the letter names yet, then you use the tests for numbers or colors. Most of the RAN measures, at least the norm reference ones that I'm familiar with that are standardized, they have different forms. So one would be just colors, like blocks, a block of red, a square of red, a square of green, a square of blue, a red square. So you're just supposed to read red, green, blue, red. You just recite it. And that is for the younger set. So that's what I'd recommend first. Let's see, what did we miss here? Oh, okay. Did we talk about your CKLA yet? Beth is also starting CKLA this fall. It is speech to print aligned. I really don't like the kindergarten scope and sequence. It starts out way too slow with phonemic awareness. In fact, they don't even do phonemic awareness at the beginning. They do sounds, or at least unless they've changed it. So if you can change that, that'd be great. Go straight into build it or read it, or switch it and not do listen to the sounds you hear and listen to the sounds in cow. What are the chunks of sounds in cowboy, and doing all that orally? We know that that's inefficient. And can you take out the CKLA decoding component and put in Reading Simplified? That's what I would love to see, if possible.
We've gotten around it because with EL, EL is very similar to CKLA. And the foundational skills block has a whole group component. So the last 2 years I've been teaching the whole group lesson. And if it's phonics based, well, I just follow their scope and sequence, but teach it in a Reading Simplified way. We don't do their small group model or anything like that, but because and I wouldn't be surprised if CKLA is this way too. The whole group lesson is designed for exposure, not mastery. And like I said earlier, with my students, I know that in second grade that they are expected to master AI and AY, those two sounds of A, and I'll teach those in that whole group block. But for the majority of the students, it's just for the exposure, because we do still want to make sure that our kids are being exposed to grade level standards. So it's important to see if there is something else that you need to be teaching in addition to Reading Simplified on the pathway. There probably is something in your curriculum that can be modified.
I hope so. Thank you. That's a good way, because there's a lot of folks that have to modify. I saw a question here that I think is important. Oh, yeah. So this is a big one. Your literacy partner. Oh, goodness. I'm having trouble. There we go. I've been wondering about that. Should we nudge students towards a different pronunciation that better matches the actual spelling, just as you did with because, or as Trisha Miller suggested with restful? Because maybe in Trisha's, at first, maybe the kid might say orally rest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, would they say rest? You would have to almost always put restful. I think that wasn't the word. Maybe it was somehow that the RES came on the first chunk, and then whatever was the second syllable, what would be resting? Rest, maybe that's it. Resting. So then she wanted to stick the T with the rest so you can see the root word is rest. So, yeah, I think both of those have their place, your literacy partner, in other words. So it kind of depends on where the student is in their reading trajectory and their spelling trajectory. And if, like, I'm going to stick that T over there with the word rest, if I think that's going to help my student. But if we're just really struggling and we're kind of just starting out with multisyllable reading and writing, then it's fine just to go resting. Let's get that word done. It's much more um, basic at that level. And the same, that's kind of just like my philosophy about the morphemes too, in general. Like, if I've got a kid who's barely reading and writing multisyllable words in first grade, I'm not going to really be spending much time on morphemes. I don't think it's efficient. They need to get a lot better at their orthography. And then if morphology is easier to put into play later. Of course, there's some morphologies that work early on, like ing and tion and pre, re, and un, but like really, non morphemes that aren't super frequent. It's not really what a kid's able to process yet. And that was one thing that John Walker said on day 2. He was quoting Kathy Rassel, who is a leading expert in reading development. And she said, it's great to do morphemes, but let's not mix it in there at the beginning when they need to be learning mostly about the code. Okay, Allison, more good feedback. Watch out for that CKLA scope and sequence. Even the first grade one doesn't always make sense for how sounds are introduced. So yeah, Beth, you have the liberty to just take out the decoding component and plop in Reading Simplified. One argument that I've had is, okay, I'm following scope and sequence A from my group, but look, actually my kids, they're accelerated beyond this. So maybe I should not just hold them back with this curriculum. So the emphasis isn't that I'm using the Reading Simplified scope and sequence. The emphasis actually is, oh, my kids are accelerated. They already know all their short vowels and they know the O sound. Do I need to just focus on short U? I don't know. That's another argument you might try. Okay, yeah, it was supposed to be resting. Sorry it took me so long to adjust. Not at all, of course. We've got some agreement out there. Thank you, thank you. Yes, for sure. There is an art to this. And I think, again, this is one of the points that Dr. Seidenberg was hammering. It's where they are developmentally. Yes, we have to absolutely teach almost everybody explicitly, but then a lot of it can be learned through their practice. Like you're talking about soccer. Was that your analogy earlier,
Yeah,
Tara?
yeah.
I I feel like a lot of the systematic phonics programs are like a grumpy soccer coach that is like doing drills. Um, and then all the kids are like, can we just scrimmage? Can we just scrimmage? And really what happens when you're scrimmaging is like, that's when you read. You're putting everything together. You're not just dribbling through cones. You have to see where the other people are in the field. You have to, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So both, almost any type of program that's teaching synthetic or systematic phonics is still going to have some of those drills, like dribbling through the cones or practicing an overhead throw. Um, but it's just a matter of what proportion of your time are you doing those versus scrimmaging. Like, I just want to tilt the balance towards real reading and back to how Tara kicked us off at the top of the hour with feedback. Because it's not just the reading practice, it's that they're learning so much through the feedback.
Yeah, they are. And I think that you've got to be direct. I mean, you can't just say, I think you did a really good job. Like, I'm wasting time if I don't say, okay, you got it accurately. Now read it again, but a little bit faster. I can get more
Mm-hmm.
done when my feedback is concise and
Mm-hmm.
direct and like I said,
Yeah.
at the time that it occurs.
Can you talk about that, Tara, about your own personal experience as a teacher? What does it feel like um, with the two paradigms? The paradigm where it was a whole group call and response, follow me with what I'm teaching, versus now what you're doing in a reading simplified setting with that feedback point. How do you feel?
When you're teaching a whole class with call and response, half the time you're just doing classroom management, making sure that their eyes are on the board, and you can't you're not listening for every student's response. You're trying to, as much as you can, listen and watch their lips, but at the same time you're also asking them to sit up straight or to look at the board, or the kids that are way, you have to at least make them look like they're, I mean, teach them to pretend that they're reading. I don't know, because it's really, really hard when you have kids that um, are completely lost, and you've got to
Mhm.
do 60 minutes of instruction that is way above their level. It's just not fair to them. And I can't give them
Yeah.
in the moment feedback because they're not at that level to receive that feedback. So it's
Right.
just nice not having to worry about that anymore.
Mhm. And personally, I'm just imagining the way I experience it as mostly in my work as a tutor is like I am kind of laid back, but just giving them so much help all the time. I feel very useful. Like, oh yeah, what else could that be? Or try ah. Or I don't really say a lot, but I can just see they're working. They're actually in that scrimmage, and I'm just saying occasional things from the sidelines.
Yeah, it's so cool, and I've trained the kids too, how to give each other
Oh, neat.
helpful and kind feedback. So for
Hmm.
our rereading for fluency, I usually have them read with a partner, and it's always the same partner every day in the same spot in the classroom. And they know that each of them will read the same chunk that the other person reads, and they know what kind of words to encourage because they just sound like me. It's kind of cute.
That's awesome. And that's what they want to do, especially K2, right? They just want to be the little teacher.
Oh yeah.
Back to spelling, Nikki's saying what I found with her own students is that once the students can read, they become more attentive to spelling. And if dictation, immediate error correction, and solid word lists, which Reading Simplified provides, and a mood for spelling is established, they are set up for success. That's a great combination of factors there. Thank you, Nikki. I like that. All right. Did I miss any big thing here? Yeah, there was some dialect conversation. Again, I think that's another area in which a speech to print or structured linguistic literacy approach um, excels because whatever the kids bring, we say, yeah, it's water, and the way it looks is water. you know, yeah, let's write it water. Oh, there's no R there in water, even though you said it like that. But it's just, yeah, you hear it this way, and this is the way we write it. And you don't make evaluations about the way you say it. And so it's super, so that there can be less judgment for any community groups. Just like, yeah, this is what. But it is good for us as teachers to be aware of, like, well, maybe like if, say, if they're, using African American English, they may drop off a consonant at the end of certain syllables, and if you are aware that that's their dialect and they drop that off, yeah, okay. And the way that this is written, we have that "l" there at the end of that chunk. So
And I don't think you do not have to over explain anything at all. And I think
right,
as adults, we just tend to do that. And like the kids don't care and they don't need to know. Just like we say, and it's, I mean, in Britain, is ER. That's just
yeah.
when I'm watching shows and I've got my closed captioning on and they say, it's spelled out ERM. And I'm like, that's just so weird. But that's
Herbs.
just how it is. We don't need
I
to
haven't
explain it to
noticed that.
anybody.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah,
One of
that's one
the,
of the things that. Go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead.
Well, yeah, we don't actually teach very many extra labels at all in Reading Simplified. You could use the word consonant and vowel, but I don't actually. I just say this is a or this is k, and I certainly don't use things like diphthong or digraph or morpheme with my kindergartners or first graders. They don't learn any extra labels. They just have to learn the letter sounds and put them together and then read and write. And it's a lot less clutter for the mind, for the teacher, and for the child. Back to the cognitive load that Dr. Snow was talking about.
It was Harriet. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name right. Genetos,
I think so.
Harriet Genetos, and she said it so beautifully. She just says letters are pictures of sounds, and so this is the picture of shh like this, and it really got me like thinking off on this tangent this morning.
Cool.
It was I as a as somebody who's not familiar with structured linguistic literacy, that's where like the rules and knowing what the sounds and the letter names are would really come into place. But then I thought about set for variability with it, and I'm thinking of the picture of EA, and depending on its context, that's how you figure out what the sound is. So then I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, like to make it more concrete, I guess, for somebody who doesn't understand it. Um, I thought about drawing just a picture of like waves of water. And depending on the context, this could either be a lake or an ocean or a sea or a pond. Just like EA could be E or A
Mm-hmm.
or F. It's just a picture, but it needs
Mm-hmm.
context to make it into its meaning.
Mm-hmm. Something more specific, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. Okay, let me do some announcements. I put it in the chat already. If you've not joined the Reading Simplified Academy and learned this most simple way to teach anyone how to read, in my unbiased opinion, right now would be the best time. We have a 7-day trial for only $9.97. I know there are many programs that are hundreds and thousands of dollars, and you can get in and get a lot of headway into the academy, and you can even have the extra option afterwards to buy our new binder for kindergarten, the whole curriculum. We have it available for you, but you'd have to print it out. So this is 340 pages that you would not have to print and would come to you with the fabulous scope and sequence that Tara was talking about a minute ago. Look at my, Vanna White was so much better than this. It's a tiny little I don't have as much room on the screen with the guests, which is cool. There we go. That's all it takes to teach kids to read, just one page. So that's what we're talking about with Simplified. So go get that trial. And if you haven't been in the summit, you can watch for free. So I'm going to drop those two links. Excellent advice here from Sherry. Do it. It's so worth it. Let's give everybody please give some love for Tara to take extra time in coming on. She's even going to be there tomorrow with the stars, the other stars from Meeker Elementary. So don't miss that. Yeah, I'm not there. And yeah, we want to thank Tara very much. I love to talk shop with you, and I love that you are leading, along with your colleagues, the charge for some great instructional outcomes at your school. And we've got some really cool things going on tomorrow. So in addition to Tara and her team talking about their experience using Reading Simplified, we also have Dr. Sharon Ware, who is the only professor that I know that's teaching this type of approach at the university level, undergrad and grad school students. She's got some of her graduate students using Reading Simplified. So she is coming on tomorrow night to talk about the summit, but it's going to be at 7:15. Okay, file that away. Thanks for being here, Tara. Thank you for all of the simplifiers in the audience. We appreciate you. Here's to making great readers.
Thanks, Marnie. Thanks, everybody.